Spring in Madrid arrived late. By mid-April, flowers were finally blooming in the gardens of old houses in a residential neighborhood. Elena Garcia parked her car in the hospital lot, closed her eyes for a moment, and took a deep breath. After finishing her 12-hour shift, she mustered strength in her tired body and opened the car door. Her daily routine as a pediatrician was always a challenge. Today had been particularly hectic, treating 3 seriously ill children, and she was finally heading home. She checked her phone and saw a message from her husband, Javier. "Dinner for the kids is ready. Yours is kept warm, so no rush. Love you." Elena smiled. Javier worked as a software engineer but always put family first. Their marriage wasn't wealthy, but it was rich with love. Their 2 children, Sofia 10 and David 8, were the treasures of their lives. She got home, the sound of the TV and the kids' laughter filled the living room. As soon as she opened the door, David ran to her and hugged her. "Mom, I got a perfect score on my science test at school today." "That's amazing, David. Congratulations," Elena said, ruffling his hair. Sofia turned from the couch and said in a composed voice, "Welcome home, Mom. I finished my homework." Her 10-year-old daughter already seemed on the cusp of adolescence. In the kitchen, Javier was clearing dishes. Seeing him, Elena approached and gave him a gentle kiss. "How was your day?" Javier asked. "Busy, but I managed," Elena replied with a smile. "Yours? A normal day. Might start a new project, but details aren't confirmed yet." Elena listened to the kids' school stories while eating her reheated dinner. This everyday warmth soothed her fatigue. After dinner, Elena noticed an envelope on the kitchen counter from her parents. "When did this arrive?" she asked Javier. "This afternoon. It was in the mailbox." Elena opened it and pulled out a thick invitation. It was for her parents' annual Christmas Eve dinner, hosted by Isabel and Ricardo. "It's an invitation to my parents' Christmas Eve dinner," Elena sighed. "Oh, that time of year again," Javier said, his voice tinged with tension. Elena's parents, a retired university professor and a successful real estate agent, lived in an upscale Madrid neighborhood. They placed great importance on social status and were always conscious of how others perceived them. Since childhood, Elena had felt unable to meet their expectations. Even becoming a doctor wasn't seen as success enough in their eyes. In contrast, Elena's sister, Laura, was married to Pablo, who had started a real estate business with their father's help and lived as a housewife. Laura's children, Lucia and Daniel, attended expensive private schools. Looking at the invitation, Elena recalled past annual dinners. Surrounded by her parents' friends in luxury brand clothing, she and her family always felt out of place. Her parents never criticized directly, but their true feelings were clear in questions like, "Why don't you move to a neighborhood with better schools?" Or, "Are you planning to send the kids to private school?" "Do we have to go?" Javier asked gently. Elena shook her head. "We'll go with the kids. It's a family tradition." She pulled out her phone and texted her parents. "Thanks for the invitation. We'll definitely be there. Anything we should bring?" Her mother's reply came instantly. "No need to bring anything. Just note the dress code is somewhat formal. Since Laura's family will be there, make sure the kids are well dressed." Elena read the message and closed her eyes briefly. It was the same implicit pressure as every year. Javier placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Elena. We can be ourselves." Elena smiled at her husband. "Thanks, you're right." Listening to the kids play in the living room, Elena reminded herself that her true wealth was right there in that house. Still, a childish desire for her parents' recognition lingered in her heart. On Christmas Eve, Elena's home was filled with warm lights and the aroma of cooking. In the kitchen, she was finishing a traditional apple pie, a recipe learned from her mother, Isabel. The scent of cinnamon and nutmeg wafted into the living room. "Mom, I wrapped the gifts we're taking to Grandma," Sofia called, tying gold ribbons on bright red wrapping paper. Beside her, David was carefully coloring a handmade Christmas card. "They look beautiful," Elena said, peeking at their work. The front door opened and Javier came in, shaking off the cold. "I cleared the snow off the car. It'll be easier to drive tomorrow." "Thanks," Elena said, kissing him. "The kids are working hard on the preparations too." Javier entered the living room, put his arms around the kids' shoulders and praised their work. "These are amazing creations. Grandma and Grandpa will love them." "Mom, do you think Grandma will hang up my drawing?" Sofia asked hopefully, having carefully stored her watercolor winter landscape in a tube. During their last visit, her grandmother had barely glanced at it and said, "How nice." "Of course she'll love it," Elena replied with a smile, though she felt uncertain inside. Her mother always said she only displayed real art. As the night deepened after tucking the kids in, Elena and Javier relaxed in the living room with hot chocolate. "I'm a bit nervous about tomorrow," Elena admitted. "Honestly," Javier said, taking her hand, "it'll be fine. It's just one day. We'll be back home by evening." "I know, but my parents' parties always make me feel pressured, especially in front of the kids." "The kids are wonderful, and you're an amazing mother," Javier said softly. "That's what matters." Elena leaned against her husband and whispered, "Thanks." The next morning, snow sparkled under the sun. Alina woke early, made breakfast, and enjoyed watching the kids open their gifts. Sophia was engrossed in her new science book, and David sat on the floor with the dinosaur model kit he'd wanted. "Now let's get ready for Grandma and Grandpa," Alina said, and the kids hurriedly gathered their gifts. As Alina made final preparations, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from her mother. "We've decided to keep this year's celebration just family. We'll see you another time." Alina stared at the screen, confused. She read it several times, unable to grasp its meaning. She called her mother immediately, but it rang without an answer. "What's wrong?" Javier asked, entering the kitchen. Alina showed him the phone. "A message from my mom. I don't understand. Just family. Are we not family?" Javier frowned, reading it. "That's strange. Try calling again." Alina did, but it went to voicemail. She tried her father's phone, same result. "What do I do?" Her voice trembled. "Calm down," Javier said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding." Alina took a deep breath. "What do I tell the kids?" They were so excited to go. "We have to be honest but gentle." Back in the living room, the kids were in their coats, holding their gifts. Alina sat in front of them and spoke softly. "There's been a change of plans," she said carefully. "Grandma texted me saying they've changed today's plans. It looks like we'll have Christmas on our own today." "But you said we'd see Grandma and Grandpa," David said, his voice shaking, tears welling up. "I know, I'm sorry," Alina said, hugging him. "I don't fully understand either, but we'll make sure to see them another day." Sophia watched silently. At 10, she sensed something was wrong. "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" "No, I don't think so," Alina replied, though she wasn't sure herself. Javier joined in. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding, but we can have an amazing Christmas right here. I'll roast a turkey and we can decorate together." The kids calmed slightly but couldn't hide their disappointment at losing the time they'd expected with their grandparents. David kept glancing out the window, checking for their grandparents' car. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Alina sat on the couch, scrolling through social media. She'd been waiting for news from her parents all day, but there was nothing. She texted Laura too, but it only showed as read, no reply. While browsing, posts from her parents' account suddenly appeared. Alina gasped. Photos of a lavish Christmas party were being uploaded one after another. Her parents' living room was exquisitely decorated. Her father held an expensive glass of whiskey. Her mother smiled in an elegant dress. There were Laura and Pablo, their kids, uncles, aunts, and her parents' close friends. The caption read, "Best Family Christmas, a special day with loved ones." Alina stared, feeling a pang in her chest. Only her family was excluded from that list of loved ones. "What's wrong?" Javier noticed her expression and came over. Alina handed him the phone silently. As Javier frowned at the photos, Sophia came downstairs. "I'm thirsty," she said, sitting beside Alina. Then she saw the open screen. "Mom," Sophia whispered, "aren't we family?" Tears filled Alina's eyes. All she could do was hug her daughter. Javier sat beside them, gently embracing his family. "We are family, Sophia," Alina said, stroking her daughter's hair. "The best family." After tucking Sophia back in, Alina grabbed her phone with trembling hands. Her heart was filled with a mix of anger and sadness. She'd always tried to meet her parents' expectations, but today they'd sent a clear message. Elena Garcia and her family weren't part of their real family. 3 months passed. Spring in Madrid was still distant, and March skies were overcast with gray clouds. Elena kept contact with her parents to a minimum. After Christmas, she received several apology texts from her mother, but she hadn't responded. After New Year's, Laura sent an email asking to reconcile, but Alina politely declined. "Sometimes it's important to keep distance," she explained to Sophia and David. The kids were confused by their grandparents' sudden rejection but gradually adjusted to their new normal. Alina's family started new traditions: weekend hikes, board game tournaments. One Wednesday afternoon, Alina returned home exhausted after a long hospital shift. As she parked in the driveway, she saw a familiar figure on the porch, Laura. "Alina," Laura called as she stepped out of the car. Her expression was subdued, her usual confident demeanor gone. "Laura, what's wrong?" Alina asked, surprised. The last time she'd seen her sister was before that Christmas. "I need to talk to you," Laura began. "It's about our parents, isn't it?" Alina replied calmly. They went inside and sat in the living room. Javier and the kids weren't home yet. Laura sipped coffee and sighed. "Things have got complicated," she started, choosing her words carefully. "Our parents' social reputation is falling apart." Alina listened silently. "The Christmas Eve incident spread through the church community," Laura continued. "Someone saw their social media post and started asking why your family was missing. According to Laura, their parents were being labeled as callous grandparents who discriminated against their grandchildren. Old friendships were fraying, and their father's position in the Rotary Club was at risk." And Alina asked, controlling her emotions. "That's not all," Laura said, frowning. "I was planning Mom's 50th anniversary party for them, but when I learned the truth about Christmas Eve, I got furious and canceled the plans unilaterally. I didn't know they were excluding your family," she confessed. Our parents decided that morning. They said, Alina's family doesn't fit our lifestyle. Alina felt a pang in her chest. It hurt to hear her parents' true feelings, but it confirmed what she'd always sensed. So what do you want from me now? She asked. Laura took a deep breath. Things have gotten worse. She explained that their father Ricardo's real estate company had fallen victim to a major scam. A fraudster posing as an investor proposed a high-value development plan, and Ricardo invested a large sum. Last week, the scammer vanished, taking all the funds. Pablo's company was also hit by the same fraud. Laura's voice trembled. We're in serious financial trouble. Alina was stunned. She'd always thought her father's business was rock solid. He'd prided himself on his financial success. But there's more, Laura said, her expression darkening. Mom was recently diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Alina gasped. What? The doctor says a stable family environment can help slow symptom progression, Laura said quietly. Alina, Mom's been getting confused more often. She mentions you a lot. Alina stared out the window. It had started raining. Our parents want to see you, Laura continued. Especially Mom. She wants your advice as a doctor. And about Dad's company, Alina finished. Laura nodded. Dad's embarrassed, but he really needs help. Alina stood and went to the kitchen. As she poured water, she grappled with complex emotions, anger, sadness, worry. She was genuinely concerned about her mother's health. She was Sophia and David's grandmother. When was Mom diagnosed? Alina asked, setting out tea leaves. 2 weeks ago, Laura replied. She didn't want to tell anyone at first, but as symptoms worsened, Alina returned with cups. Laura, I'll be honest. When our parents excluded my family, it hurt deeply, especially the kids. Sophia and David did nothing wrong. Laura nodded. I know, I'm so sorry. It's not you who needs to apologize, it's our parents, Alina said, but hearing about Mom's health, I'm worried. Just then the front door opened, and Javier and the kids came home. Sophia and David looked surprised to see Laura. Hi, Aunt Laura, Sophia said politely. Hey, David greeted awkwardly. Kids, I need to talk with Aunt Laura. Can you grab a snack and play in your rooms? Alina asked gently. After the kids went upstairs, Javier joined them in the living room. Laura greeted him calmly. Alina briefly explained the situation to her husband. Javier listened quietly, nodding occasionally. So your parents need help now, he said finally. Yes, Laura replied. I'm doing what I can, but we need Alina's medical expertise and calm judgment. Javier looked at Alina, his eyes asking, What are you going to do? Alina took a deep breath. Laura, tell our parents they can come to our house tomorrow afternoon. I'll hear what they have to say. Relief spread across Laura's face. Thank you, Alina, but I have one condition, Alina said, her expression serious. I want our parents to apologize directly to my kids. The hurt Sophia and David felt won't heal easily. Laura nodded. I'll tell them. After she left, Alina and Javier sat in silence for a long time. Are you sure about this? Javier asked finally. I don't know, Alina replied honestly. But if Mom really has dementia, for the kids' sake, I have to do something. Javier took her hand. I'll support whatever you decide. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. The thought of facing her parents tomorrow weighed on her chest. At 6 p.m. the next day, Alina stood by the window, watching for her parents' car. Javier was in the living room with the kids, gently explaining the situation. Grandma and Grandpa are coming today. We need to talk about something, he said softly. They won't leave us out again, will they? David asked anxiously. His innocent question pierced Alina's heart. David, Sophia scolded her brother. You shouldn't say that. At 10, Sophia was starting to grasp the situation's nuances. Alina was sometimes amazed at her daughter's maturity. Everything will be okay, Alina said, joining them in the living room. Grandma and Grandpa are coming to apologize for Christmas Eve. They want to talk to you directly. Really? David's eyes widened, but Sophia's expression was skeptical. Why all of a sudden? Alina hesitated, grappling with how to explain her mother's illness to the kids. Grandma isn't feeling well right now, she said carefully. Being with people she loves is important for her. The doorbell rang and the four exchanged glances. Javier stood. I'll get it. As he opened the door, tense voices were heard. Alina took a deep breath and stood. When her parents entered the living room, Alina was struck by their appearance. Ricardo's shoulders were slumped. His usually dignified posture was gone. His face showed fatigue, his eyes downcast behind glasses. Isabel had tried to dress elegantly, but her makeup was slightly smudged, her hands trembling faintly. Alina, Isabel said, her voice weak. Mom, Dad, Alina greeted calmly. Please sit. Her parents sat on the couch. Sophia and David sat across from them, eyeing their grandparents with a mix of curiosity and caution. Please hear us out, Ricardo said, his voice shaky. Please, Alina, Isabel added. Alina took a deep breath and looked at them. Don't you have something to say to the kids? Ricardo and Isabel exchanged glances and nodded. Isabel turned to the children. Sophia, David, she said softly. Grandma and Grandpa made a very foolish mistake. We're truly sorry for hurting you, Ricardo added, his expression serious. Sophia stayed silent, her face impassive. David, however, asked bluntly, why didn't you invite us? A heavy silence fell. Isabel and Ricardo exchanged looks again. Finally, Isabel answered in a small voice. It's embarrassing, but she searched for words. We didn't want to show our friends the modest lifestyle of Alina's family. Alina gasped at the confession. She hadn't expected such bluntness. Modest. David asked, confused. What's that? It means, Ricardo started, but Sophia cut in. It means they were embarrassed because we're not rich. Her voice was calm but sharp. But we're happy. Tears filled Isabel's eyes. Sophia, you're right. We were living with the wrong values. Kids, can you go play in your rooms for a bit? Alina asked gently. The adults need to talk. Sophia and David went upstairs reluctantly. When they were out of sight, Alina turned to her parents. It's good to know the real reason, she said calmly. At least I appreciate your honesty. We were wrong, Ricardo said, bowing his head. We're truly sorry for hurting you and the kids. Your family is wonderful, Isabel said through tears. We just didn't see its value. Looking at her parents, Alina felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, compassion. Laura told me, Alina shifted topics, about Mom's health, about Dad's company. Ricardo's shoulders slumped further. It's humiliating. Everything I built over a lifetime, my memory getting strange, Isabel said, her voice trembling. I'm scared, Alina. Alina took her mother's hand. As a doctor, she understood how terrifying a dementia diagnosis could be. I'll connect you with a good neurologist, she said. A colleague at my hospital specializes in this. Thank you, Isabel said, relief in her eyes. And Dad, Alina turned to Ricardo about the fraud case. One of my patient's fathers is a lawyer. Maybe he can help. That's, Ricardo choked up. Thank you. Javier, who'd been silent, spoke. Don't forget the kids. It'll take time to rebuild their trust. Of course, Ricardo nodded seriously. I accept your apologies, Alina said quietly. But rebuilding trust will take time. She stood and faced her parents. And there's one condition. You need to face the consequences of your actions directly and from now on be a real family in the true sense. Her parents nodded. A humility Alina had never seen appeared on Isabel's face. Determination shone in Ricardo's eyes. Night after her parents left, Alina and Javier talked quietly in the kitchen. Can you really forgive them? Javier asked gently. Alina sipped her tea thinking, not fully, not right away, but I think we've taken the first step. Javier put his arm around her shoulder. You're such a strong person. I'm not strong, Alina smiled. I just know family ties are more important than anything, even if I didn't learn that from my parents. The sound of the kids' laughter came from upstairs. Alina reflected on the day's events, listening to that sound. Rebuilding her relationship with her parents would be a long road, but today they'd taken the first step. A year later, winter had returned to Madrid. Through Alina's window, snow piled up in the garden. In the living room, Sophia and David were helping decorate the Christmas tree while Javier stood on a ladder, placing a star on top. Grandma, where should I put this ornament? David asked, holding a blue glass ball, addressing his grandmother, who sat in a rocking chair in the corner. Anywhere you like, my treasure. Isabel smiled softly. Much had changed over the year. Though Isabel's dementia had progressed, with regular family support, she had many stable, peaceful days. The neurologist Alina recommended, along with a safe environment, had been effective. Ricardo had recovered some of the scammed funds but didn't return to his former wealthy lifestyle. He and Isabel sold their large suburban house and moved to a small apartment just 10 minutes from Alina's home. Sunday family dinners became a new tradition, sometimes including Laura's family. I'll check the pie, Alina said, heading to the kitchen. Isabel stood. I'll help. In the kitchen, the two women worked side by side, a scene unimaginable before. That Christmas Eve was the biggest regret of my life, Isabel said quietly, watching Alina take an apple pie from the oven. But without it, we might not be here today. Alina turned and smiled. Life's irony. Isabel sat at the table, holding a teacup with wrinkled hands. Only after losing money and social status did I understand what the real treasure was. It's never too late, Alina said, squeezing her mother's hand. Most of their old social circle had drifted away, but true friends stayed. Ricardo had started volunteering at the church and now even mentored other seniors, becoming an exemplary grandfather who rebuilt his bond with his grandchildren. On sunny days, Isabel walked the neighborhood park with Sophia and David, calling them my treasures and showing affection she'd never expressed before. The doorbell rang and Laura's family arrived. Lucia and Daniel ran to their cousins and the adults exchanged greetings. Laura had changed too, her clothes less flashy, her attitude humbler. At dinner, Ricardo gathered everyone and said, "This year, I want to thank Alina, Javier, and the kids again for teaching us the true meaning of family." Glasses were raised and smiles spread across the table. When dessert time came, Sophia stood and said, "Grandma and Grandpa, thank you for being part of our family." At those words, tears of gratitude fell from their eyes. Two people who once clung to their narrow definition of family had finally understood true wealth. Outside, snow fell silently, and the Christmas tree lights warmed the room. Alina looked at her family around her and felt quiet satisfaction. A path that began with pain had transformed into healing and true bonds. This Christmas had become a symbol of inclusion, not exclusion, and that was the true meaning of family.